very, very early. I'm sitting down, light shining just in this position. Didn't realise it was going to affect the screen, and I'm not feeling very well. I'm feeling really run down and really ill, which is great. But I want to play through these. There's only six left to do of this James Herbert series, talking about his books, and then I'm going to move on to another author, hopefully. I will be doing some music stuff as well, but I tend to stick that on my Facebook page if you're interested in that. Funny thing about this is, um, I actually thought I'd done this review. In fact, I knew what I was going to say about this particular book, and I'd started doing this review, and then thought, hang on, I've already done it. It's already been uploaded, and lo and behold, it hasn't. But I got the strangest sense of deja vu from uh, from talking about this originally, even though I hadn't done it. So I'm going to review it and say pretty much exactly what I'd already said. But yeah, this is a weird one. This is a I've got an uncanny sense of deja vu talking about this book. So at number six on the James Herbert best of books, I've chosen his 1994 book, The Ghosts of Sleath, which is the second in the David Ash series of books. And right from the off, I think the one thing that I noticed about this book, in comparison with everything else that Herbert's ever wrote, is the use of language. I think that this book was written at the absolute height of his powers because this contains probably the most eloquent use of language that Herbert's ever done in a book. And it surprised me on reread just how well written this thing is. There are some people that would probably say this is filled with purple prose, i.e., like overly complicated language or throwing words in there for the sake of throwing words in there. It's kind of like a mid. Great thing about this book. It sees David Ash come to the village of Sleath to solve a haunting, but the haunting itself, and I'm not going to throw major spoilers here because I want you to read this for yourself. It's connected to the past of the village, and there's just as much unpleasantness going on with some of the living as there is with the dead. Now, I do have one major criticism of this book, and it's the reason why this book's at number six and not even higher up. And it's difficult to convey into words without spoiling things. So this is my best attempt. And if it's a bit too vague, then by the time you've read it, if you have read it, you will understand hopefully what I'm getting at. But the actual main sort of plot here, the what the villains of the piece are up to is quite clever, but I don't understand why they're doing what they're doing now and why they think what they're doing now will work when it hasn't worked for literally hundreds or thousands of years. It doesn't make sense to me. They're, I understand their aims and their ambitions, but not the reason why now is the time for this to make any difference when things haven't worked in before. It doesn't make sense. But in saying that, this is such a well crafted tale that it doesn't really matter. I mean, firstly, I love the character of David Ash. He's one of my favourite characters in all of Herbert fiction. And after the events of Haunted, he is emotionally and in some ways physically changed. And again, I'm not going to reveal anything major that happens in this, but this has another. I mean, Haunted had one absolutely hell of an ending, and this has another ending that blindsides you, I think, and is both physically and emotionally devastating for the character and for the reader. And I spoke about um, in Ash in James Herbert's 2012 novel Suddenly's Last about the character of Ash not feeling like Ash, feeling like somebody else wrote Ash. And that's because the way that Ash conducts himself in that book and the way that he talks to people and forms bonds with people just would not happen after the events of two previous books and how he's been treated and things. And this is in particular the fact that this is a book that happens a short while before Ash itself, the story several months earlier. Um, Nobody who went through these events would ever be the same again. They wouldn't be the same after Haunted, but this in particular. Um, and yeah, it's a bit sad because I'd have loved a third story about Ash dealing with probably his mental breakdown and his psychosis and everything else. And we never got the third Ash book we really should. And I know I just wonder maybe is there anybody on the Herbert estate or anybody that knew Herbert who Herbert was a huge fan of who would actually be able to do justice to a third book in the Ash series and actually write a decent ending for the character, because I think that's what's lacking. We don't have a great resolution for David Ash. And I'd be up for even like whether Herbert had notes or whether he's somebody on his estate or a book written by another author, but somebody who's a huge Herbert fan would actually take that challenge up and do one. I don't know, maybe because 2028 uh, would be the 40th anniversary of the character, and it'd be nice just to have. It'd be nice just to have. But I don't want to end this on a melancholic note. I popped up there. There I am. I want to end by saying that I think this is a fantastic book. I genuinely do. I think it's a really, really great novel, and in fact, the entire it only very nearly missed out on a top five spot. But that's because this is a great book, and then the books I've got in my top five I think are utterly essential. Um, and there's one story that's similar to this, but even better in my opinion. But yeah, the Ghosts of Sleath. It's got a silly name, but it's a fantastic book. It really is, and it's at number 6 on my list.